Welcome. Today we're going to look at doing a rapid fire design. This is for a church property. Let me just pull this up here. There we go. So this is the church property. They haven't reached out to me at all. This is just an example design that I thought I would come up with. So I have found their property, figured out what the property lines are to make sure that I'm not working in an area that is bigger than it is. Maybe they actually only own this area. In this case, they own all the way back here. So I'm going to head over to my software. I'm going to start a new project here. And I'm going to load my template. And let's start by pulling in some data. Now for this design, I'm probably going to have a few times in it when I'm going to cut out some waiting periods. I've got my computer's working hard right now, so there may be portions that take a little longer than I'd like to make you wait. So it might get trimmed up a bit. We'll take a look at that as it comes. Let's see. We're looking at... There's Brockville. That would be Athens there. And this is the property that we're looking at here. So I'm going to select the area that I want to bring in. In this case, I'm actually going to go a little bit wide to see the surrounding area. There are some significant details here, so I'm going to increase my accuracy and import this into the software. Now, so you can see in 2D I've got these this topography that you can see. When I switch to 3D mode, then we can see this white stuff here is all of the topography going up and down. I'm going to hide that one for now. And we can see here we've got our property. And if I was to switch to visualization, this mode here, you can see not a lot of up and down, but you can see that it does have the shape of the land has been imported in here. It's not the most accurate information. It is close enough for these initial concept designs. For anything really critical, I would go out and take my own measurements, but it's again great for these initial concepts. So I'm going to go top, I'm going to go to rendered so I can take a peek at what's going on. And I'm going to start by mapping out the property, the usable space. Now from these maps here, I know that their property starts at the edge of, I'll switch back here, this house. It goes straight back over, and it goes straight back over here. It looks like the farmer's kind of taken over the other side of this little stream, creek, drainage ditch, whatever it is here. So I'm going to assume that that land on the other side of that drainage ditch just isn't really useful for us. So I'm going to start with some lines here from this point back to here over. I'm just going to kind of roughly follow this creek and back to here, and I'm going to close that. Now I'm going to add in some more lines to show a couple other important things. Actually, I'm going to go with the parking lot first and turn this on from here. Ooh. I'm going to turn off the roads that it put in. From here, we're going to go to the back corner, over, up, over. Not sure what these little bits are that stick down here, but we'll roughly map it out. And then end that point there. Now you can see some of my lines have disappeared. And that's just because some of the spots go uphill versus down. So I'm just going to elevate those to the terrain, so that way we can actually see them for the most part. So now we've got this front yard here, we've got a backyard here, and we've got this looks like a drainage coming from their parking lot out to the wetlands over here. So for this one, I'm going to draw some curves around there. And draw another set of curves from here. Oop. I'm going to turn that auto snapping feature off. And turn it back on for this bit. There we go. So we know we're not going to be growing anything in here, and as we grow close to that, there are probably going to be some issues with water. This is a location where a site visit would be essential for figuring out what the water situation is. I'm going to go with the assumption that the water situation is fine. So now we've got the building. As I switch back to perspective here, I've actually imported approximately the building as it is. We've got our topography there. Oh, I haven't elevated these ones to terrain, so they're sticking up in the air. There we go. There we go. So now those are down by the terrain. I'm going to do the same thing with this outside property line and elevate it to the terrain. So you can see it's added in a lot more points here and over there as it's navigating the curves of the property. So we've got a pretty good idea of the base that we're going to work with. So I'm going to organize my file structure over here quickly. I'm going to start by getting these terrain portions, and I'm going to move them into each of these. I'm going to do 2 models today, and one to the original here. And then hide everything else. Hide everything else because I don't need it right now. There we go. I'm going to move this one to my base map. There we go. I'm going to leave that one just on the base map, and I'm going to copy these buildings around here. I like to copy some of the other buildings in the area, just gives a little bit more of a reference of what's going on when we zoom out a little bit more. I'm going to change these over there, and I'm also going to copy them to here. Oh. Okay, I've got my outline here, which was supposed to be in here. There we go. So now I can turn on my features that I want. And turn off my topography because it makes things a little bit wild here. And it's still showing up because Model 2 is on. There we go. Let's turn on those lines that we set up. Now I'm going to start with a really simple basic orchard, and I actually have something that I have pre-built in here, is this row. So I'm going to copy it over into my planting folder so I don't mess with my original. And what this row has, oh, there we go, is, let's zoom in a little bit here. It automatically has, with the correct spacing, a bush, a nitrogen fixing tree, bush, bush. This is an Asian pear, bush, bush, apple tree, bush, and then it repeats. And however long I make this, it will adjust the number of trees accordingly and keep the spacing correct. So I'm going to switch to my top view here, and I'm not sure what's in that front yard there, so I'm going to take a quick peek at street view here and see. Okay, so we've got a sign, and they've got a few trees here, some younger trees, but a few older trees. For this first one, we're going to assume that everything is coming out, just to keep it really simple in here, except for those signs there. I'm going to switch this to make it easier on my computer to 2D mode. So let's start with a row of trees right there. Now I'm going to make a copy of the whole thing. Let's see what we can kind of fit into this space here. Now I need to remove a few of these so that we have room for the sign. Let's see. Oop. Select a row and ungroup. There we go. Still learning the software, so I accidentally exploded the tree into every leaf was a different item there. So I'm going to remove some of the trees that are along in front of the sign here, so the sign is still visible. We'll leave some bushes in there. I might actually add a few more bushes in there. I'm going to ungroup this one as well so that I can get rid of everything that is on top of that sign. And this one. Actually, I'll put that one back. I'm just going to move that one over a little bit so we keep that bush. I'll move this bush over a little bit here so it's in line. We'll add a few more bushes in the front here, but in this case, actually this tree is probably going to want to come out as well. So you can still see the sign, but we can fit a few fruit trees in here. I would rearrange the order of them a bit just to make sure we keep that ecological function happening. But we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 groups of 3 trees, those trios with a nitrogen fixer and 2 fruit trees. So that is, if we're using larger semi-dwarf trees like I am here, then that is about 3,600 pounds of food plus a little bit more from the additional bushes that would go in here. We'd probably add quite a few more bushes into this space. But then we can take the same idea here, and I'm going to take one down here and line it up. And we might actually leave this spot blank for snow removal. But let's head down here and see what this looks like. I'm going to move that down a little bit more, closer to that property line. There we go, but I'm going to leave room at the top here again for snow removal. There's a lot of parking lot here, so I imagine some gets pushed on the sides. I'm guessing that they use this first area as well. And here, again, we're just going to do a simple cloning of this row of trees, because this is the most basic design is these straight rows. And it's not necessarily something that we'll do for every project, but it's a good concept to stick into the design, just to have the idea out there of if they wanted it, this is an option. Now we're going to bring this over so we're staying out of that swampy area, and we'll probably leave it at that point. But let's stick a little bit more, another copy of this one over here. Go. Now if I was actually doing a final design for this one, I would look at curving these to keep them on a contour, do a little bit more with actual water management. But for a initial proof of concept of, hey, this is what your property is capable of, this works pretty well. Let's see, oh, because of the slope, I don't have my second control point here is currently underground. So I'm just going to switch my view type here, bring that one back a bit, bring this one up here. There we go, just stick a little bit extra in there. So now if we look at this, I'm going to take a quick peek at the plant list of what is in here. So we're going to have about 33 of those trios. We're going to add more bushes into the front. Our ratio, it won't all be these trees. These are my placeholder trees that I like to use. But this is going to be about, let's see, so depending on the year, somewhere between 20 and 30,000 pounds of food per year grown with this setup. Now this is the basic design style that I showed in my landscape design workshop. Let's change my view here so that I can see everything again. There we go. So that's a really simple option. I'm going to take a look at something a little bit different now. We'll turn that one off. Let's go to a Model 2. And in this case, I'm going to start by adding some paths. So let's see, that looks like they've got an entrance somewhere around here. I'm going to take a quick peek at that street view again. Okay, so the entrance is right on the front, so it would be a nice spot to have some access through here. That's just a covered entryway. And anything else of note here? As I zoom down, beautiful, lots of windows here. Ah, they've planted a row of trees on this side. Okay. So with that, this is that kind of entry area. So I'm going to start by drawing a few paths on here. So I'm going to have one that comes from the middle here. We're going to stick back from the parking lot a bit more so that we have room for our snow removal. And let's see, I want to keep visibility in here. What I might do is put some low growing bushes, things like that in here. So I'll have this go, we'll go right in front of it. And we'll come back out over here. Let's see. Just looking at my spacing to make sure I have room for the plants that we want. And I'm going to try and work around the existing trees here. And we'll just come right back to that point. I'm going to give a way to get in from this parking lot over here. We're going to curve that just a little bit to keep it a little nicer feeling. And from over here, let's try and get people to come in from the road, but we won't go right from the road itself. We'll go just off the sidewalk because that's there might be a ditch here or something. Now, let's see, this is all going to be bushes. I'm going to stick another little bit of a path in here. And let's get a few more access points. From over, let's see, if someone's coming from walking into church, they can come this way. Not many people are going to be coming from the other side because it's country, but I'm going to give that option just in case. Where they can kind of come in. That one's not very direct flow. Ooh, that did a weird on me. Let's see, from here over, and we'll come back in this direction. There we go. So that way if they come in, they can kind of work their way over towards the door here. These ones can come down this way. And let's stick a few trees in here. Actually, let's make these into actual paths now. So firstly, I'm going to make them all flow with the terrain, make that elevation correct. There we go. Now I'm going to switch over here, add a path in. And I was just working on another project that has a similar path. And I'm going to, in this case, for these mock-ups, I stick the paths half a meter high. It's way taller than the actual path will be, but it makes sure it shows up well in these drawings. So not something that I would do in real life, but it works well for these mock-ups. So I'm going to turn all of these into paths. Change my view here to see. Okay, it did put it in. I'm going to delete the original lines because I don't want them showing up in my pictures. One moment, I was still on path there. So let's get rid of those now. There we go. I accidentally added a second path there, so I'll delete that. There we go. So we have some basic paths in here. And I'm going to add some trees in here. Let's see. I'm going to start with some semi-dwarf apples. So nice big apple trees. And let's see, I'm going to turn that snap off because I don't want this on the line. So we've got a sign here, so I want to keep that open. We could stick something up over this way. It's a tall enough tree that it could come up over the path a little bit without having an issue. I'm going to leave a bit of space there. Now we have, this is the entry. I'll do one there. And I'm leaving space for the other support trees that are going to go in here. And again, this is just kind of like a rough idea. I'm going to lay some stuff in here. I need to keep this open. I might stick one more apple tree in here. No, I'll leave that for now. So I'm going to choose a different plant now. In this case, I'm going to switch to the Asian pear. Here we go. I need to adjust the settings on this Asian pear. They have it as quite a small tree. I'd like it on a bigger rootstock. I'm going to stick one out here, one here, here, because I put my nitrogen fixer over there. I want a nitrogen fixer there. Let's see. In this case, I'd fill in a couple other different types of bushes in here, but for now, I'm only using limited species for this because I want it to be my general layout mock-up design. I'm going to put this here and back just far enough that it should be safe with snow removal. Same thing here. We've got our line of sight for our sign there to keep in mind. We just kind of start filling this in a little bit. I'm going to put some, I need a nitrogen fixer there. I could also go with one nitrogen fixer in the middle to kind of support the trees around it, but I'd like to have a little bit more than that. This is going to stay pretty open. Let's switch our plant up here. And we're going to use the thornless honey locust as our nitrogen fixer in this case. They can grow to be a really large tree, but in this case we're going to be cutting it back. So we can insert it as a smaller tree. We can train the branches down so it stays a little more neat and tidy. We're not as worried about this one being a pretty beautiful form of a tree. We want the function of it. So it can get shaped in a number of different ways to make this work. Let's see. That would require some more aggressive pruning than I want to sign them up for. One there. We're going to fill in some of this with bushes. Maybe a little bit of a path in here and a bench in this area would be good. Let's see. No more over there. I need some nitrogen fixing here. In this case, I'm going to stick them a little bit closer to the road, knowing that if they get damaged by snow removal, they'll come back, and that'll actually improve our soil just by having the trees hit it. Here we go. So let's stop out of there. I don't usually add the bushes when I'm doing this sort of mock-up, but because we've got this sign in here. Oh yeah, the sign. Let's see. This one is going to have to move back a little bit. There we go. Because I think our sign is right here. Let's double check. Rendered. Yeah, we've got two that are kind of fairly close to the sign, and the nitrogen fixer in behind it. I might move this one back a little bit more. And then it can add nitrogen for all of these ones around it, but little less opportunity for seating area, but you could still get a bench or two in here, even a picnic table or two. For example, let's take a real quick peek. If I was to put, I don't know if I have a simple picnic table in here, loaded in here. Yes, I do. There we go. Yeah. So for example, that's what we could fit a few picnic tables into this space around their sign and make this a nice, lovely shaded area. I'm not going to do that right now. What I want to do is add a few bushes up at the front there. In this case, I use typically one bush for all of the examples in this, which will be, I don't have it added to my favorites yet. Current, and there we go. I've got my current in here. I'm going to switch my view again to the wireframe so that I can see everything. And we've got the sign in here. I'm going to add a little, a little hedge of currants. They can be planted a little close together. They won't produce as much food each as they would on their own if they were spaced out. But as a whole, they're going to produce, make a nice hedge along the front. And then in this case, we'd probably go with some perennial flowers, something that's going to be really pretty. It's going to stand out nicely on the front. Again, not something I would typically add in at this point, but let's go for it for now, just to get an idea of what might be there or how it might work. I'm trying to think what. There we go. Not all of the pictures, not all the models that I have a nice picture. So I was pretty sure the calendula did. So I'm just going to toss that one in. And we're going to come over here. I'm going to make sure that it's full size. Yes. And just for the sake of having something in here, I'm just going to pile a bunch of one plant in there. And the same thing, we can use a little bit of edible landscaping on the front, but knowing that anything out on this edge here is going to be prone to getting hit by the snow removal from the county. So that could be a bit more of a challenge. Let's take a look. I can't use that plant list feature because I've got that I just used before, because now it's going to count both of them. Actually, I can give it I can do it and just subtract what I had before. Documentation, plant list. Let's see what that looks like. So we did about 10, so 5 to 9,000 pounds of food in the front here. I oftentimes find that when we do the meandering paths, we get a little bit more in there because they tend to be a little closer packed than on the linear orchard where we have a wider path intended for mowing. But let's take a look and see what this looks like as well. We're going to do a perspective. Let's bring this full screen and turn that structures back on. So now as you're driving by, this is where that sign is right around where these arrows are. So if I was to switch to a walking mode, and this gets really weird really quick here. If I move my mouse, let's see, so we'd be able to see it nicely from there. And I'm going to turn this away and just go back down the road a little bit here. And see what that looks like from over here. So you've got the church building is in behind. You can see that it's back there. You're going to still see those beautiful windows. Those windows are going to have a view of this. And as we up. We've got the sign would be visible from here. And you're going down the road. You can see the church in behind. Some pretty flowers up front. A nice row of hedges with the sign in behind it. I think that would work nicely. You'd have to choose your plants well. I don't know how tall their sign is. And as we get down to this point, this is where we stop seeing the sign. And the driveway is just right there. So I think that would work out pretty well for the visibility while producing, in this case, what did I say? I think I said 5,000 to 9,000 pounds of food per year in that front space. So we haven't even touched the back yet. Let's see if I can. This does not like getting out of, there we go, out of walk mode. So that's this space here. We've designed it with some meandering paths. Now, if I was doing the back portion, I would plan for, actually, let's do a little bit of that. We're going to have our entry point, maybe a little bit of a path along the edge. Let's see. We'll start from here. So we're going to come along the back, and I want this extra meandering because it might get used as, a prayer walk or something. Let's do a hard turn here, and we'll have a bench there. It can be like a prayer station, prayer walk. I'm going to keep this one up here. Leave room on each side. And then I might actually have 2 points where it comes in and out. This one. So you can have a prayer walk sort of situation coming in through here. A few stations. You have your starting point. And then you come up and maybe you've got a station here for a prayer topic, or if it's a whatever you're displaying. And then you come around. You've got a few kind of locations where it can be when you're here, the people that are here aren't really seeing you. And then here is maybe put a little bit more of a bend in so it feels private. Another one here, another one up just past this corner. And then we can do something similar over here where this becomes a place that grows a lot of food but also can be used for other purposes in their ministry. So let's see, then I come back up over here and let's have enough room for a row of trees there. And in this case, we may just have mostly the one path down the middle that would get used, but we'll run a little access down this side on the outside of these fruit trees. We're going to come up over here, leave room for a nice big tree, and we'll come out over there. So now here again we're going to pop our paths in. I'm going to use that same profile on both of these. I did not switch these to the terrain view, or I elevate them to the terrain, so it might look a little bit funny, but it should be all right. And in this case, I'd probably put a few large trees in here as well. I don't have any of my nut trees here. The horse chestnut I put in because the other chestnut tree, the shape is all wrong. But there's room for a nice big tree or two over here. Maybe another one at the back edge. Where you can go underneath that canopy because it's going to be a tall enough tree. And then who else we're going to add here? We're going to go with some of those same characters again. Let's add some of those apples in here, just to get an idea of what that means for production. 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 10, 11, 12, and we'll do 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, which means each one of these will plant another plum or Asian pear or whatnot. So I'll have double that number of fruit trees plus the nitrogen fixers. So between the two, we're now looking at, let's see, what did I say? 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. There's 32 plus the front one, so we'll call it 42-ish. Means this one is in the 25 to 40,000 pounds of food between this front yard and this back one. Now there might be some water issues back here. In this case, we've done the wandering paths to host more of a retreat sort of vibe. And let's actually take a real quick peek at a final look at what this might look like. So when you're down here, there'll be more bushes filling in between. There'll be some flowers, and it'll be these nice, beautiful paths down here. Filled in just enough that you can feel, you're not really seeing over there. You can feel a little bit more private. We'd add some bushes in here, lots of bushes in the bottom layer so we don't see back there. And gives a nice contemplative space. And so then if I was doing a design for the client, I'd finish filling this in and stick a scale on here, and then I would export those files. But this is what a kind of rapid fire design for a church might look like. Two different options. One is designed with those straight rows, which was, let me quickly move these over, select these and change them over there. There we go. So we've got this option with the wandering paths, or this option with the straight rows. My paths are on a different spot. Oh, I accidentally put them on my base map. And so two different options. Both of them are going to grow a similar amount of food, but I'm definitely a fan of these curving paths. And either way, they're producing up to 40,000 pounds of food a year on this church property that is currently being mowed. That's a lot of grass to mow. So hopefully we'll see you again for some more rapid fire designs. This one's a little less rapid fire, a little more of this is what our typical design process looks like when we're coming up with initial ideas. So typically what would happen is I would be looking at what their values are, what their property is. I'd have talked to them a little bit more. And then once I've done that, then I'll come up with a few designs like this that match their values, their goals, their vision. And in this case, I just assigned my own values for it. They want to have the sign visible. They want to have as much fruit production as possible. One was the straight paths where they can just mow in between them, keep it really easy. The other one is more of a mulched pathway. It takes a little bit more maintenance, but provides a nicer prayer walk experience. So at this point, what would happen is I would typically have 3 designs. They would give feedback on them, and then we'd come up with one final design that I put a lot more detail into, and they'd be able to give their feedback on that, and we'd tweak it, adjust it to be exactly what they want, and then they could either install it themselves or we could install it. In this case, I'm going to fill this out a little bit more, and once it's filled out, I'll send this one to them and say, hey, just so you know, this is an idea of what you might be able to do on your property, and let us know if you have any questions. So, thank you for hanging out with us.